Hello and welcome to another podcast of The Odd Couple. This is Siddharth here.
I'm Arjun.
And I'm Dr. Sheesh.
Hey guys, how's it going?
All good, all good. Busy day.
So Arjun, I really wanted to ask you this question.
Yeah, shoot.
Okay, not just you, but even Dr. Sheesh. So when did you guys lose your virginity?
Hey, shut up, man. My mom listens to this.
So does my mom, but...
I have not lost my virginity yet, Macha.
Oh!
Of course he hasn't lost his virginity, Macha. We're in the most blessed country ever. 1.3 billion people, all immaculate conception.
My mother will be so proud of me. But it's weird, no, how our country is like that. We wrote the Kama Sutra. Now it's just so hush-hush, Nobody likes to talk about sex.
Yes, totally. It's such an irony that from the land of Kama Sutra, we've kind of somehow gone down this rabbit hole of sex itself is a bad word. And that is a sad part.
So how did we get to this stage?
I don't know. I think we've always been a conservative type of people, no?
It wasn't always like that. Actually, if you really go back and into the earlier yugas, according to the whole Hindu philosophy, back then it was more about consciousness than about morality. Morality wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but more about being self-conscious and being absolutely conscious about the environment and about yourself, about your body. So if you see anything in the past, they'll say, hey, listen, these are the things that needs to be done, and this is the right way to do it. The whole thing which happened, or the shift kind of happened much later. I do not know exactly when, but I feel it happened a little later. As the time went by, people kind of lost the consciousness part of it, and they kind of got into more morality part of it. And that's where all the good, bad, pure, impure, all those things came into play. That's the way I see it, at least.
Do you think a few centuries of King George and Queen Victoria and all their ilk had anything to do with it? Because they came in there with that whole like, oh my God, they're just all having sex. The natives are running around just doing all these things.
No, true. I mean, a lot of this morality is definitely rooted in the Western culture of things. For example, in Kerala, among the Nair men and women, the concept of marriage didn't exist until the early 1900s. It was called Sambandham. It's just the Nair woman can choose the men that she pleases. When the whole Britishers came and saw what's happening in the kingdom of Kerala, that's Travancore, Cochin and Calicut, they were amazed like, what is this abomination of the sacred sacrament that is marriage? It didn't even exist in Kerala. But then they brought about changes. They infused morality. The women in Kerala never wore anything. I mean, they didn't cover their breasts. They used to walk out openly like that. And it was normal. My great-great-great-grandmother, there are pictures at home where she's absolutely topless and it's perfectly fine. But the morality, the Western morality, was imposed through the kings and rules and stuff like that. And then they said, oh, showing the breast was immoral. It was impure. And then you bring about all this kind of restrictions, which led to temptation. And that kind of went down the slippery slope, which is the sad state of affairs that you see today.
I think that's all very deep there. What you guys are saying is very spiritual and stuff. For me, why do animals have sex? To reproduce. That's the whole point of it. So I don't understand why we have a whole morality, immorality. There's nothing to be moral or immoral about it. It's a natural process which keeps evolution going, carrying forward. So I don't know why it has to be there or doesn't have to be.
I think the entire frowning upon it happens somewhere down the line with the enjoyment of the act. Because if you were there and you were just making babies, you were just doing your God-given right to reproduce. This is your job, make babies and just be quiet about it. You don't have to go make a song and dance about it and start enjoying yourself and frolicking. Somewhere down the line, the enjoyment, I think, skewed things and brought in things of, oh, should we be enjoying ourselves while we're doing this?
Do you think that is because probably, maybe, every time we have this type of a scenario, what you're talking about, which is, sex is being portrayed as this more than larger kind of thing, like it's because that population is doing really well economically and are diverging in other things, forms of discovery through the form of sex as one of the mediums, like how they use literature, art, dance. Like, the olden days when our civilization was really much further advanced compared to the Western world, we were dwelling in things like this, which was art, poetry. We had priests who were dwelling in religion and stuff like that. We're a land of thinkers. And probably that's my thing, that, like when you take France at a period of time when they were at the economic greatest, or Britain, that's when they have this whole emergence of sex being more than what it is, than a form of reproduction, but more frolicking.
I think it's a little different. I think it's not about sex. I think it's about sexuality. So
Okay.
when the sexuality is in the body, then it's natural. As you said, people and animals, and we are an animal, we have sex to reproduce. And that is sexuality in the body. Once the sexuality goes to the mind, and how does sexuality reach the mind? It's through temptation, it's through restrictions. Saying, oh, this is taboo. This is the more curious a person is, more tempted he'll be by it. Whether it's drugs or whether it's sex or alcohol, it could be anything. The solution to this, according to me, is sex education. People talk about, oh, the educated class or the lack of education. I think there's a lot of educated people, but they are very illiterate when it comes to sex and sexuality. And hence, it's really necessary to have sex education. That's the teachers and the parents needs to be instrumental in imparting this kind of important knowledge to the children of today and tomorrow.
So that's a great point you made, Sid. But if I have to ask you this question, where do you think the sex education should lie, with the parents or with the school which they're studying
It
in?
has to be an open discussion in a forum of teachers and parents, because the children will feel safe in these two environments maximum.
So if I had to ask you, did you ever have the conversation of the bird and bees with your parents?
Oh, I think I'm the very lucky few who had. My parents were quite open about it. They called me aside. They spoke to me about the whole the aspect of it. Spoke about women's periods. I mean, even something like the menstrual cycle is such a icky term for most people, when it's the most simple, natural biological process that's there. But it's such a thing. I mean, it's all spoken hushed tones. We're talking about the sanitary pad. If I go buy a sanitary pad, then they cover it in some cheap newspaper or a black plastic cover. I don't understand this. Why can't I just carry it and walk around? I always wondered that. It's again rooted in sex.
That was my point, which I was asking you about, whether you need this information from your home or from school. And you aptly said it should be from both. But I think it starts, like most things, from home. The majority of Indians, as far as I know, don't get it from home. This information doesn't reach them somehow. Maybe it's too taboo to talk about at home. I don't know. But I come from a family where I don't think I ever got that conversation. God bless my elder brother, who was pretty much my sex educator, and who told me stuff which I never
But it's
knew.
still family.
It was family, but some of the information which I got from him was utter nonsense. Like what the pad was used for. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
He told me that women couldn't control their bladder, and so that's why they use a pad. And I swear I believed this until I reached the 11th. No, I don't know when sex education started in school, 9th
Yeah,
standard.
9th, 10th standard. Oh, we were one of the few schools which had sex education.
I think Miss Swami was her name. God bless that woman. She showed me the light. But I remember sitting in her class, and she was teaching us about the women's menstrual cycle and everything. And I was sitting down there thinking, God, this woman has it all wrong. She doesn't know what she's talking about. So yeah, so that's how it is. I think most of us are people like us who had siblings or elder siblings were our sex educators. We got it from them. But it was never the right information. It was always like stuff which just misleads you
You hit the nail on the head. It has to be the right information, most importantly, because if you get sex education from your peers, and like how your brother told that sanitary pads are because women can't control their bladder, or something innocently stupid like that, can lead to a lot of misconception later on. What is sex education about? It is about educating the curious mind of a child about the body, consent, abuses, how to deal with such situations, sexuality. the different kinds of genders. There's so many kids who have struggled with gender identity. I mean, it has such a psychological scar in them, but only if they had a helping hand saying that, hey, listen, it's normal, when they were much younger.
No, I completely understand what you're saying, Sid, because it was tough on kids like us. We lived a normal life, a good, healthy life, and generally not too much of complications in our life. So when it was tough for us, you can just imagine how difficult it is for somebody who's confused and doesn't know, and where do they get their help from?
And kids are really mean. I mean, if we found a effeminate boy in our class, we would pull his leg. I mean, that's all that the kids know.
Yeah.
But when it comes from a teacher and parents, and there's an education about it, and it is not about being a normal, abnormal. Everybody is normal, and so is this. And then we go ahead and have a conversation about it, and then there's an exposure to it. There is no longer a temptation, there's no longer a curiosity, and curiosity leads to perversion. And that's what we see today, that the parents are as uneducated sexually as the kids. There's zero guidance happening either from a school front or from the parents. And then we are stuck with a bunch of a generation or 20 generations or 50 generations now. And you see what's happening in UP and other places. There's some statistics which I pulled out, and I was shocked because I didn't bother Googling it before. There's a crime against women every 3 minutes, a rape every 29 minutes, a dowry death every 77 minutes, and 70% of the women face domestic abuse. There are 25 crores of abused children in this country. It's just scary to what level that we've reached, and it's high time we have sex education.
No, you're right. I don't think that a lack of sex education is the only cause for it, but you're right, it's primarily one of those causes. I had a friend who said to me that when he was an adolescent, he said that his body was ready, but his mind didn't understand what was happening. And he couldn't come to terms with what is really happening with him. And there's nobody there to really talk about it. And when you don't have somebody to talk about it to, you kind of regress to within yourself. So you don't know whether that feeling is a good feeling or a bad feeling when you reach puberty. And sometimes you're dealing with it thinking it's a bad feeling. And I think for most girls, that's more than men, they go into this whole thing of it is not healthy itself to be sexual, so that whole conversation is a different ball game on its own, because in India we're a country which is patriarchal. It gets very difficult, like the topic becomes very difficult for a woman itself to raise this thing. For when it's difficult for men, you can imagine how difficult it is for women.
As a society, I think we create that boundaries or hurdles, making it difficult to express. The moment I can't express, and that's when it becomes difficult. Forget the internal turmoil that people have, but I think society by itself put these hurdles across. Whether it's society, whether it's religion, whether it's concept of my wife has to be a virgin. That whole thing of pure, impure, premarital sex being looked down upon. It is a whole kind of one khichdi of sorts, where nobody knows anything, but they know one thing, that sex is taboo.
I don't know whether it's pessimistic or not. Yes, there are a lot of people in our generation, yes, who are a little more emancipated, a lot more free thinkers now than before. But I think even by and large, this generation is kind of screwed as well. It's up to the next generation. The reason I'm saying so is when you take the urban kids today, and I'm saying this from a personal point of view because I have two teenage kids, and when I see what their friends talk about and how they interact with it, they are far more aware sexually about types of genders, types of alternate sexualities. For them, it's not something they have to educate themselves as so much as it is a part of their lives and their friends and friends who are existing in alternate sexualities and expressing themselves differently. For them, it's fine and normal. They feel that indignation, that anger. They also have the knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. I feel there is a shift in that generation. When you look at the shift that's happened with my kids and their friends, it hasn't honestly happened from my generation as parents. Yes, we are a lot more open in understanding it, but we haven't given them that knowledge. We've given them the freedom to think about it. But it's not like we have taught them this or passed it on.
That's where I want to just make that point, which is what you were saying, about your children being much more aware. There's no difference between what happened to us and what is happening to them right now either. The only difference is the amount of information which they have is a lot more, and the amount of pornography which they are allowed to access is far more than what we had.
And what is considered pornography also a generation back is also changed, no?
So my whole point is just that, which is there's no difference. They're still as lost as we are, just that they know a lot more and they're exposed to a lot more. It's like in our generation, we would have got away with sex education for teenagers. Now I have to sit down and have a conversation with my 5-year-old child and tell her this is a good touch, this is a bad touch. Because our exposure now in the world has come down to just that, which is now we have to educate our children at the age of 5. Yeah, but it's always still biological. It doesn't get into the fact of, okay, what sex is, what you feel about it, how you feel about it. Is it wrong to feel the way you do? Is it right to feel the way you do? You masturbated, is that bad? If you masturbate, are you doing something wrong? And if a girl masturbates, is that something wrong? These are things which we need to talk about.
I think these are things which needs to be normalized.
Exactly. But these conversations only happen among their peer-to-peer group, which is among that same age group. And none of them are educated enough to give them an answer. So now they're learning off we touch the fire, we burn it, and then we realize that, oh, this is fire. But a whole process of education is that, okay, one person already did it, which was our great Adam. Why do we have to do it all over again? We should learn, right? Why are we so taboo to talk about it? There's nothing wrong with sex being good.
I think the only way forward towards having a very open, informal kind of a conversation, it has to be informal. The more you make it formal, more weird it becomes. I'm saying it has to be a very informal conversation between the trifecta of the parents, the teachers, and the kids. And the reason I'm saying it has to be a triangle of sorts, because if the parent is also uneducated from the realms of sexuality or sexuality rights or gender equality or gender identity, there are a lot of parents who are not exposed, right? They've had similar kind of upbringing. I'd say that the reasons that rapes happen is because the son was pampered at home.
That's not a right statement to make, Sid.
It's fine. You can disagree. What I'm trying to say is that we have the whole concept of this ladla beta. Son in the house is the best thing that's ever there. The whole female infanticide is a separately different ball game. We're talking about child marriage. We're talking about so many social evils, as we call it. Women are the pillars of patriarchy in our country. Now, even the women folk in that house itself enable it. They're silent enablers. It's not that they want to do it, but it's a custom. They'll say, हाँ हमारे घर में ऐसे ही होते हैं. It is normal. It's normalized. Whether sons can get away with crime literally, and it's still okay.
Yeah, but that we have to understand that when people rape, right, that's a different psychology altogether. There are various causes for it. One of it, like what you said, is correct, which is, where we have this male dominant type of personality where you feel that you are superior to women. And yes, in India, we do have that perception, but it starts very young for them where, at a young age that they are primed that they are superior to girl children. There are a lot of these local tribes and cultures which from a young age itself they are primed like that it's okay, you can tease a girl ko chedna, it's okay, wo maza ki baat hai bas. But that itself is wrong, and when you start priming them like that, anything goes, no?
Exactly. Now who will correct them? Either the teachers or the parents. And that's exactly what I'm trying to come back to the original point, that unless there's a corrective course taken, either by the teachers or the parents, ideally together. Now, what happens is that the parents also need to be educated. Most parents need to be educated saying, hey, listen, this might be normal in your household, but it actually isn't. For example, I don't think I was ever allowed to raise a hand on my sister Sandhya. Impossible. I'll get whacked by my dad.
I think you get whacked by your sister first.
That for sure.
One is I'm getting whacked by my sister, but I'm saying the secondary, more painful would be for my dad. And he's like, listen, whatever it is, you talk it out. You argue, yell, do whatever it is, never raise a hand. And that becomes a basis on how I treat and respect women. It starts at home. Like how you say charity begins at home. Even good manners and behavior and the way you interact with society begins at home. And that is fortified by your teachers and the value system that you gain from your school.
Another way I think people try to tend to feel comfortable to talk about is also like especially parents like of our generation maybe who never spoke to us about it, and now we are getting into that generation where we need to talk to our kids about it. Sometimes it can get a little bit uncomfortable maybe to start the topic, but children are curious. Just like I used to see these advertisements of Whisper and Carefree online and go and ask my parents what the hell it is, and they'd say it's none of your business. It shows that children are curious. They see stuff, they ask you. When you start this in school and you start showing them that this exists, automatically this curiosity leads them to come back to home and talk about it. That is always a channel which opens up, and you should capitalize on that channel. So for me, when we say whether the school should do it or the parents should do it, I know we are already playing this back foot game where not many parents already have all that resources and information to give it to them. And ideally, it should be brought into a curriculum in school across India where this thought process can start and tickle their minds that they can bring it home and then discuss it with their parents.
Yeah, but I think the biggest opponents to sex educations are the parents itself. They're like, oh, I don't want to send my kid to this school because they think that sex education leads to sex, or they're teaching them how to have sex. That is not what sex education is about, right? And their fear is that there's going to be a rise in teenage pregnancy or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Teenage pregnancy is already on the rise thanks to a whole child marriage system. So what are you guys been talking about?
Now, when this child doesn't get this information right, what do they do? Or how do they deal with it? Like different children deal with it in different ways. And in like what Arjun mentioned earlier, the children of today have a lot more information at their reach compared to us. And I'm a doctor, and I'll tell you, I hate it when my patients Google. So just imagine when these children are Googling how much information they get. It only confuses them more.
And mostly wrong information.
Exactly. At that age, you don't know what you're watching also. And when they start watching porn at such a young age, where there's free access to it, left, right, and center everywhere, there's no check itself. So when they have that type of information, I mean, this starts working on their head. They don't even understand sex or lovemaking or the romance part of it. It's just all desire and pleasure, right? It's all hypersexuality everywhere. And that is the thing. Without knowledge and only hypersexuality everywhere in our film industry, music industry, porn, everywhere, it's all that. What works on the child's mind? This is what leads to them thinking males, especially, and in porn, the women is subjugated more than anything. So that builds up to that other understanding that they are superior to women again.
And it gets worse because the government has banned porn in India. So when the government itself bans porn, now what happens, even though it is not the best place to get any kind of information, especially on sexuality, but that particular temptation, like you want to watch it more. Like if somebody talks about butter chicken, suddenly I have this craving to have butter chicken and nice crispy garlic naan. It just sounds so good suddenly. But somebody says, no, you're on a diet. You can't eat it for next 20 days. Then suddenly all you're thinking is only about that. Your mind is obsessed. It becomes an obsession.
Prohibition has never worked across anything. The government did the same thing in the early 90s, I think, where, they kind of stopped advertisement of condoms.
Oh, I didn't know this.
There was a period. Nirod was our first condom.
Correct. Nirod, yes. Oh.
Yeah. And funnily, it was actually called Kamraj. And Kamraj was actually the Congress president at that time. And so then they had to change the name because it was the Congress president's name. So they named it to Nirod, which is protection. It was after Kamadev, right? Kamraj, they named it. So anyway, they ran that whole program because it was the era of HIV and sexually transmitted diseases, as well as we were trying to do population control. But then after some time, the whole taboo angle came that we don't want to be seeing this on thing, and they stopped it. And then they realized that sexually transmitted diseases as well as, population was also increasing. So they realized it didn't work, and so they brought it back, and that's why it's allowed now.
And I want to add one more thing over here. I think even now, I'm not sure if this particular ruling has been lifted or not, but all condom ads can be played only after 9 p.m. in India.
Oh, is it?
There was some ruling like that. I don't know if it's been lifted. They're like, oh, children should not be exposed to it. How do the children happen? I mean, like, this is just all the parents listening to this. Just rewind the tape a little back. Just imagine what you were as kids. Just imagine what if things had changed? What if you had a better understanding of this? If not you, probably your friends or the people who you know. The world would be a slightly better place if things were far more normalized. Whether it's about sexuality, whether it's about transgenders, whether it's about alternate genders, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think you made a good point again over there, Sid, which is, you know what? We tend to forget about stuff like. Do we really forget this stuff? I wonder, like, I mean, you were a kid once and now you're older, and then what? You don't know how you felt, how you were, how lost you were, or how great it was. I mean, it just beats my mind as to how people go about setting these rules and things without anything for reference. I mean, weren't they kids once in a, at one point of time?
But they all have a frame of reference, you're right. What did they forget suddenly growing up? They always had a frame of reference at that same point in their lives, no?
It's selective amnesia, right? All parents are the model student, the best kid in the class. Did always very well in school, were never punished, always listened to their parents and elders, and obviously extremely celibate for some odd reason.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we don't buy that story anymore. Yeah, we're 40, but...
Yeah, we're 40. We better not be buying that. It'll be like the movie, the 40-year-old virgin.
No, but I feel we owe it to our children, to at least this current generation. And it's very sad to see what is happening in our nation, where there's just so much of rape and violence in that field. And maybe some of it can be reduced by just mere sexual education,
Sex education.
Yeah, sex education. Correct.
So, guys, we come from a land of Kama Sutra. It's time that we normalize and have a very open, informal conversation about sex, sexuality, as well as gender identity and equality. As Nehru had once said, first Prime Minister of India, you can tell a lot about the condition of a country or a nation by looking at the status of its women. And the only way we can make our country much safer, an ideal place for women, is only through having a very open conversation, as I earlier mentioned. We would love to hear your thoughts on these. You don't have to agree with us, but only by disagreeing and having, again, an open chat can we learn more, both from you and hopefully from us. Do follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and please do share and show your love. Thank you so much once again. Keep tuning into The Odd Couple. I'm Siddharth.
I'm Arjun.
And I'm Dr. Sheesh.
Oh, guys, by the way, this is our 10th episode, and we just crossed 1,000 plays.
We did?
And we have more than 100 subscribers as of now. So a big shout out to everybody. Thank you so much for liking our show, sharing our shows, commenting on our episodes, and giving us such amazing feedback. It really energizes us to do better and hopefully come out with better content.
Yeah, the support has been amazing. Trust me, Sidhu and Arjun never expected the support which you're all giving us. We're truly grateful for this. We're really looking forward to doing some more great episodes and keeping you guys entertained and informed.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're telling me at the time of recording this right now, we crossed 1,000 plays?
Exactly.
Wow, that is super awesome.